Hello, and welcome back to another one of these things. February was a bit of a weird one, but I managed to squeeze in some films to talk about. And it turns out I actually watched more films than I did last month, so that's cool. But yeah, this time will be a little bit different. Rather than cinema watches and home watches, I guess. This time will be films that were released this year, and films that were released prior to this year. Because, you know, Netflix originals are a thing now, and I didn't know whether to include that in the home section or the cinema section, because I'm not, even though some of these will be films from last year because they only just came out here. Oh yeah, by the way, the lighting setup today is extremely weird. Now look at this. What even is that? So yeah, the first one I watched was Amy, the Amy Winehouse documentary from a few years back now, and I liked it a lot. And what I really liked about this documentary is, well, at the start it really gives you the feeling that you're getting to really know who Amy Winehouse was as a person. And throughout the documentary, as there's less and less archive footage of her personal life, there becomes a bit of a disconnect. And I think that was a really interesting creative decision, whether it was intentional or not. It makes it even more tragic and heartbreaking as it goes on. And I think, yeah, as a documentary, it used some pretty interesting techniques. Nothing too extraordinary or groundbreaking, but what it did effectively, and yeah, I'd recommend it. The next film I watched was the Steven Soderbergh film, Haywire. I've been wanting to watch this film for a while, mainly because I heard the action was good, and I quite enjoy Steven Soderbergh most of the time. But yeah, this was very forgettable to say the least. You know, it had a very convoluted, bland, gobbledygook spy movie plot, and it was done pretty well, but yeah, not enough to be memorable in any way. But the most fascinating thing I found about this film was, for some reason, they dubbed over all of Gina Carano's lines, who was the lead actress in the film. It was so clearly dubbed to the point where there was sentence splicing to make sure the words matched up with her mouth movements, and it was incredibly distracting, and it sounded like Google Translate. But yeah, there's a bit where she says law enforcement officers, but it sounds more like
law enforcement officers.
But yeah, I guess I liked the confined time frame of the film. It had some tense moments, and it had really great actors. I think that's one of the main reasons I wanted to watch it, because the cast is incredible. I don't know if I'd recommend this one. Unless you really like Steven Soderbergh and his directing style, then I'd say, like, sure. But you could probably just get away with watching the action scenes online or something. Next film I watched was Paddington. This film has no right being as good as it is. I should say, it's a great family movie. I don't want to talk it up too much. For a film like this to come out now and be this well shot, creatively directed, have really effective humor, and also have themes of immigration without being too heavy-handed or forced. Even though I heard this film was meant to be good, I kind of went the last few years thinking that this was some sort of Yogi Bear, Alvin and the Chipmunks, Peter Rabbit type film. But no, this was really good, and I definitely recommend it. Next film I watched was Stanford Prison Experiment. I guess just like Haywire, this movie was incredibly fine. I didn't think any of it was particularly that memorable outside of the premise of it, but none of it was particularly bad either. It was riding out line the whole time for me. It was a competent film, and the actual true story it's based off is one I'm familiar with, and is the main reason I watched it, because I thought it could make an interesting film. But I guess I just found a lot of issues with the way it was executed. I think specifically the visual style and the use of POV in the film. I think it would have been much more effective if we viewed the whole thing from the point of view of the prisoners, and if we never cut out to see what the psychologist was doing. Because the attempted suspense of him potentially getting in trouble with the law or whatever for doing this experiment was so much less interesting than anything that was going on with the actual participants of the experiment. I guess to me it just felt too documentative rather than being an immersive, visceral experience, which is kind of what I thought it would be and what I'd expect from a film with this premise. Yeah, I guess that's not what they were going for, so it's not necessarily a flaw, but I found it to be a flaw because I didn't find much of it that compelling. Next film I watched was Double Indemnity. I don't have many notes written for this. Actually, I have no notes written for this, but no, I really liked this film. I kind of half watched it as research for a noir film I was writing at the time. So in that regard, I was kind of surprised that this wasn't really like the typical noir film I was expecting. The whole noir element was actually really creatively done, I thought. Especially with the narration, how the femme fatale was used, and I guess just the overall plot. It was a lot different to what I was expecting. And I could really tell this was probably one of those pioneering, defining films of the suspense genre. Because there was a lot of things I noticed in there that are very much tropes that have been done to death in films today. But nonetheless, this was still very entertaining to watch, and yeah, this video is a goddamn mess. Next film I watched for the first time was Titanic. I've not seen Titanic all the way through until now, and I liked it. I don't know what I can say about Titanic that hasn't been said already, but so I'll talk about the things I didn't like about it, I guess. I didn't like the whole framing device of it. The first 20 minutes or so of this were completely pointless, I thought. I got why they did it in the overall scheme of things, like as the movie progressed, and especially how it ended. But no, what I was surprised at with this film is, even though this is a film that's so ingrained in pop culture and everyone knows the ending, it's a meme at this point. But I was surprised how effectively done the romance was, and I really felt the chemistry between Kate Winslet and DiCaprio. Although I'll say that as actors they were definitely not the DiCaprio and Winslet that we know today. Like, their performances were much more theatrical and actory. But yeah, despite that, they had really great chemistry with each other, and I guess that's all that matters with a romance film like this. And goddamn, that that James Horner score. So the next film I watched was The Gift, and no, not the Joel Edgerton one, the Sam Raimi one. Recently I've been trying to watch all of Sam Raimi's filmography because he's one of my favourite directors of all time. And I found a lot to enjoy with this film. It's not perfect by any means. I didn't find it overly memorable. As a much more restrained Sam Raimi film than what I'm familiar with. I think he accented what could be a fairly by-the-numbers murder mystery, with a lot of effective, terrifying moments and use of suspense. But no, I think the best part of this film was Keanu Reeves playing against type as a abusive arsehole. I don't know, I found that fascinating. But yeah, it's definitely not the standout film of Raimi's filmography, but it's still a pretty well-rounded and effective film, with pretty solid character work and performances all around. And the final film I watched in this category was called Hypernormalization. This is a documentary about a lot of things. Well, how do I put this? I guess how over the years we've been shaped to view and accept a kind of fake and normalized version of the world around us. And it was a pretty long doco, so it covered a lot of ground all the way from the 1970s with the fiscal crisis and what was going on in Syria, all the way up until, say, like 2015. And yeah, there's a lot to talk about here that I probably can't do justice to. But yeah, I thought for a film that was essentially 100% archive footage, it maintained its sense of momentum and remained compelling throughout despite its lengthy runtime. I do think it could have been refined a little bit, just a little bit. It's clear they had a lot of stuff they wanted to cover, and boy did they do it. But yeah, I definitely recommend this if any of that sounded interesting to you, and if you just want a really interesting and relevant documentary. So now, let's finally get into the new releases. First one I saw in February was Phantom Thread. I'm a fan of Paul Thomas Anderson. I think he's very versatile and one of the most meticulous directors of our time. And I really enjoyed what this film was going for with its exploration of toxicity in relationships and ego, and I don't know, it was just really uniquely told, I thought. There's clearly just so much thought and detail put into every frame of this film. The performances, of course, are fantastic. Daniel Day-Lewis in his supposed final performance. Vicky Krieps was great in the second leading role, I guess. What was I saying? This film was full of just great little memorable moments that really made this film stand out to me. You know, you've got that scene at breakfast where the main lady, I forget the character's name, is trying to butter her toast or something, and Daniel Day-Lewis is just being real stubborn and nitpicky about it. It was thrilling at parts, really dark, weird moments of comedy. I think this is definitely one I need to see again, because I'll admit I didn't get all the layers that this film had to offer. I think a second watch will really solidify my thoughts on this film, but as a first watch I still really enjoyed it, and I'm I'm glad it's up for Best Picture. Next one I saw was Molly's Game, the new film written and directed by Aaron Sorkin this time, and I really liked this film. I think as a director, Aaron Sorkin did a pretty good job for his first time, even though I think it would have been stronger if he had, say, like a Danny Boyle directing it. But I think for a first-time director, the way he stages a scene and a conversation was really effective and well done. And it didn't really feel amateurish or cheap at all, but I thought I'd just mention that because I think that could have elevated the film to that next kind of level. But I think because he directed one of his own scripts, he really had a clear idea of how he wanted it to be told and seen. And in a way, his script informed a lot of the decisions, especially with the rhythmic editing and just the overall tone and style. Once again, this is a film I probably want to see again because halfway through the theater had to be evacuated because of a fire or something. So I missed about 15-20 minutes of this movie in the middle, but that's fine. So next film I saw in the theaters was Greta Gerwig's Lady Bird. It's so hard to put my feelings into words with this film, because it's one of those films where I just felt every moment of it. I feel like Greta Gerwig has developed such a grasp on capturing the nature of human interaction, really finding those moments that are so universally relatable to anyone who's watching. And to me, I think it's clear that she's learnt a lot through her experience with other directors, and especially her relationship with Noah Baumbach. And I thought in many ways this film almost works as a spiritual prequel to Frances Ha, especially with the time it's set and, I don't know, just the themes and the characters involved. The film looks great. It has that very 16mm look to it, even though it was shot on an Alexa Mini, I believe. It has a really sharp editing style that I think brings out the comedic or dramatic undertones depending on the scene. And the balancing of the tone in this was so seamless to the point that they can't exist without each other. Like, the comedy and the drama are one and the same. I think rather than telling a wholly unique and completely out there story that hasn't been told before in like a crazy, amazing, show-offy way, it's not what this film is, and I don't think people should expect it to be. It's a film that emulates the nature of everyday life and tells its story through brief vignettes that almost weave together to create a satisfying whole. And I don't know, I can't wait to see this again. It's definitely one of my favorites of last year, and I hope it does well at the Oscars. Next film I saw in theaters was The Post. Yeah, it was good. I was actually surprised how much I enjoyed this film because it seems to be the Best Picture nominee that people are talking about the least, and the one that people are least enthused about. I've got to say that only Spielberg can make a film that's this kinetic and riveting about newspapers. I think he's still at the top of his game as a filmmaker, and he's elevated what is a pretty timely story to something I think will stand the test of time as a well-executed piece of cinema. As far as the Best Picture nominees go this year, it's probably one of the weakest ones, maybe even the weakest, but that shouldn't undermine anything because I think all the nominees this year were great. But the way Spielberg uses the camera and the performances and everything to do with how this was put together, I don't know, it was much more compelling than I was expecting it to be, which I should expect because it's Spielberg. He knows what he's doing. But yeah, probably one of my favourite Spielberg films in a while. Next film I saw in theaters was Black Panther. You guys already know it's good. I don't need to talk too much about this. This is the first MCU film in a while to actually delve into real-world implications and do so with thematic relevance to the characters. Everything this film does from a story standpoint or a thematic standpoint all exists to serve the characters and ground them in a world that exists outside the confines of this particular story. And I think although I have my issues with this film, like, I think the third act kind of delves into typical MCU Marvel territory. You know, there's stuff blowing up, people are punching each other. And I don't know, I thought the CGI was pretty weak in this film as well, in comparison to other Marvel stuff. I really think the attention to world building and sense of history with this film is really what sets this apart from other MCU entries. And I actually feel like for once there's actually a lot that can be broken down with the character dynamics and the way they were shaped and informed, and the underlying implications addressed within the film's message, I guess you could say. Last two new films I watched were both Netflix originals. First one was The Cloverfield Paradox. And the second one was Duncan Jones's Mute. I did not enjoy this at all. As anyone who's been following Duncan Jones's career for a while would know, this has been a passion project of his for 15 years or so. And I hate to say that now that it's here, it's not great. I just felt so disconnected from the story the whole time, and I didn't find any of the characters all that interesting, or the concepts they're exploring that interesting. And there's some really strange decisions made with the subplots in this film. The cinematography looked nice, there's some creative visual moments and everything, but overall I just got nothing out of this. I like Duncan Jones as a filmmaker, I love Moon, love Source Code, enjoyed Warcraft. So I have to say I appreciate the ambition and the effort he put into making this, but it didn't really pay off for me. Man, what a way to end this video on a bummer note. Two really bland films. Thanks for watching this scatterbrained mess. But yeah, feel free to let me know what you thought of any of these films down below. Give any feedback on this video. Yeah, I'm still new to this whole talking to the camera thing. I'll probably do another one of these for March if I get around to it. Hopefully I can pump out another video essay or something in the meantime. But yeah, thanks.